Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 19 of Talking About Horses. In these broadcasts, I try to bring you some of the best riders, horsemen, trainers, equine advocates, and thought leaders in the horse industry for tips, insights, and stories. You can listen at home, at work, in the car, or even in the saddle, either through Facebook, YouTube, or by downloading the podcast from the iTunes store or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Miss Ariana Sakaris. Ariana has committed many years to traveling, both within the U.S. and overseas, to gain experience and be mentored by respected and world-renowned professionals. This includes riding for many years with a former Russian Olympic coach, learning from an authorized student of Nuno Oliveira, and training under numerous other gold medalists in dressage. She's gone on to learn and gain experience both nationally and internationally alongside accomplished horsemen and horsewomen in the field of liberty work, and has performed at events such as the Denver Stock Show, Breyerfest, and the U.S. Dressage Finals. She currently travels for clinics and offers a very unique virtual lesson program that allows her to work with anyone in the world at any time. And today, she's here to chat with all of you, our listeners around the globe. Ariana, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is great. So for anybody out there that doesn't yet know who you are, even after an introduction like that, can you kind of start us off, give us a little more about who you are and how you grew up in horses?
Sure. So I started riding when I was about 5 years old, and at the time my family was living overseas in Greece. So that's where I started riding, and my mom gave me my first riding lessons, and she said that when I stopped listening to her, that's when she put me in a lesson program. So started learning from some teachers, and from there, we came back to the U.S. and went and started riding at a riding school, and working with different rescue horses they had in the riding school program. And my curiosity about horses just kept growing and growing, and especially encountering so many different horses of different backgrounds and having different stories and things like that. And so from there, it just kind of, the more people that I met that were doing what I wanted to do, the more questions that I had, and it really became like a fun journey for me to travel and to meet people and learn from people, and kind of anybody out there that I saw was doing really great work that felt right to me, that looked right to me. I always tried to go and ask them if I could go learn with them, even if it was just one lesson, or even if it was something that was 2 weeks or longer. But I kind of took this journey to go seek out and find the people that I liked the work that they were doing with horses. And my background, under saddle is in dressage. That's kind of what I've always pursued. But alongside that, I think my bigger pursuit has been how do I really work with the underlying state of the horse, with their mind, with how they see me, how they view me, no matter what I'm doing with them. So the underlying state of that horse, how do I get that horse to feel better and work better with me, and for it to be real? That's really kind of the basis of everything that I do now. But the journey to get there has been very, very interesting, because I've kind of followed my gut along the way and met some very amazing people along the way as well. And I'm continuing to meet amazing people that are doing great work. And certainly all the horses that I meet are teaching me quite a bit as well. So yeah, I guess that's a little kind of background there, but brief background, but yeah. Yeah,
that's good. So what had your family in Greece?
So my father worked for the government, and we were stationed over there just for 5 years. So I was there when I was in elementary school, and went to a British embassy school there. So it was just for 5 years, and then we came back to the U.S. So a short trip, but it was very, very good to kind of grow up those 5 years in a different culture, and all my friends were from different countries. So I learned to enjoy learning about different cultures and languages from a very young age.
That's awesome, especially at that young of an age.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. That's great. And so you initially had goals to be an international rider, is that right?
Yeah, because that's kind of all that I knew at the time, and I I was riding with, a certain trainer, and he was, kind of suggesting and pushing the idea to me to keep pursuing riding, and it appealed to me, but on some level, my gut knew that there was something more that for me, and not to say that top riders don't have that, but for me, my interests I had to follow my gut feeling, and I knew that I had to pursue kind of a different route at some point, and I'm very glad that I followed my gut, because I think that it's led me to areas that I never knew existed, and really kind of pushed my learning, and pushed what I was even seeing when I was just looking at horses in general and watching them behave. So yeah, my first wanted to be a rider, and I still pursue that alongside my other goals, but it's not my main focus anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it's taken you down some pretty awesome pathways. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. And so you spend some time in France then also, right?
Yes. So after college, I went over to France and enrolled in a program where I could teach English for 12 hours a week. So, I got to have them put my hours on, let's say, Monday and Tuesday. And the rest of the week, I would go and try and learn from people, actually anywhere in the country. It's about the size of Texas, so it gives you kind of a perspective. But sometimes I'd hop on a train and go literally 9 hours to go spend the weekend somewhere to learn, and then hop on the train to come back. And, I thought, well, I can either sit at home for that time and sit and, read or work on the computer, but I can also sit on a train and do the same thing. Sure. And get somewhere new at the end of it. So, it was a good, very, very good few years, learning a new language, and especially learning a new language and learning the horse vocabulary. That was something in itself, because, you might be able to hold a conversation, but then you go to a farm or you go try and take a lesson in another language and you don't know the word for like canter or halt or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So
right. Sure.
Definitely was good to start to learn that kind of stuff. And all those, all that vocabulary came along with just time, but it was very, very good for me to be there and to see people working that I wouldn't have been able to meet had I maybe not traveled,
Right. Very cool. So you started out, you said you were teaching English then?
Yes, teaching English, because that got me over there to have a job, to be able to stay there and live there for that amount of time. So
gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Is that what you went to school for then, teaching?
No, I actually got my degree in biobehavioral health.
Oh, okay.
And at Penn State University. So I got my degree there, and it kind of just left the door open for any healthcare or something like that field. And healthcare has always interested me more in the sense of well-being for people and animals and things like that. So it was kind of the degree that most fit based on what they had to offer. It fit what I was interested in the most. But while I was pursuing my degree, I was equally outside of the school pursuing the horses and seeking out, experience and professionals, just not at the school,
Gotcha. So then the desire to go overseas, then that was just because you wanted to travel, or was France something specific? You wanted to go there for the horsemanship, or what was the deciding factor there?
I had always taken French in school ever since I was in elementary school. And, of course, that means that even at the end of college, you still don't speak the language. So I thought, well, let me go and at least take advantage of an opportunity. At the start, it was only for 2 years, or it was actually only for one year. And then I just renewed it a few times. But I just thought, what better opportunity than to take advantage of something like that that's out there. So once I got there, I actually didn't know of any horsemen there at the time until I actually got there, and I started going to these horse festivals that I heard of, and then I started to really see people that were doing pretty amazing things. But it wasn't until I actually got there that I got to see all of that. Gotcha.
And it was at one of the festivals that you really got interested in the Liberty work, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I went down to Cheval Passion in the south, in Avignon, and it's like a really artistic horse festival. They have like all the artists, they call them like artists from around the country, come down there and perform, and they even have like bars and restaurants where the center of the bar, the restaurant, is a square arena where different performers come in every 15 minutes and perform new acts. And so you really get to see a lot of variety, a lot of different styles, a lot of different horses, and so forth. So I went down there, and I went all by myself because I thought, well, you know, no one wants to come, that's fine, I'll go anyway. So I went all the way down there, and I was walking around, and I saw Jean-Francois Pignon had a booth, and behind him he had some like TV screens, and he had all of his white horses, you know, there, and doing really amazing things. And there was a line of about maybe 30 people waiting to talk to him, and I thought, well, I'm not going to wait in line, you know. So I kind of walked by, but as I walked by, I heard this older gentleman ask him, how do you reward your horses? And I never heard the answer, you know. So I was walking around, I started like pacing back and forth, and I was really curious what it was. So I got back in line, and I came up there, and I asked him, I said, hey, I didn't hear the answer to this question, I just heard it walking by. So what is it? And he had said in French, the word was just my com, and that was his answer. He said my com, and he just kind of stared at me, and he said, well, actually, he's like, I just opened up a clinic at my house. We do it just once a year, and he said, if you want to leave a deposit for it, you're more than welcome. It'll fill up, you know, in the next hour here. But and at that time, I really didn't have any money at all, and for me to leave a $50 check was that I will not get back even if I don't show up. So right. I left it, and I was walking away, and I was like, I don't even know where this clinic is, and I just left money, and like, you know. But I ended up going, and then it just like blew my mind, because I realized, like, you know, all my kind of following my gut feeling of all the experiences I've taken have brought me here to this person that's imparting this knowledge onto all of us, and me, that is so valuable and makes sense and opens up my eyes to so much more. So it was really meeting him that had me even, you know, introduced me to this work and all the possibilities with it. And I very much respect him as a person for what he does, you know, and continues to do. But that's where I learned about that. And of course I saw other people doing similar things as well down there. But that moment, like, I'll never forget that moment. That was huge.
I'll bet. Yeah. And I love that answer, my calm. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So for me, I guess, based on my experience, my interpretation of it, and also my opinion, what I've discovered with that is that what happens is when we work with horses is, you know, we're doing things, we're active, we're asking, we're moving our body, we're, you know, using our tools and our aids, but there's almost like a part of you that you have to develop. Like half of you has to be actively doing and communicating with the horse, but half of you has to be completely neutral and observing what's happening. And it's like there's two sides of it, you know, like you have to be able to have a conversation, but also be able to stand there and watch without judging and just see what's going on. And doing all of that, staying in the moment, staying present with that horse, knowing that horse is constantly scanning you, that they're unable to turn their scanner off. And that's their birthright, that, you know, you can never take it away from them. So for me, my calm is, and it's something that I think takes a lifetime as a human being to develop, but it's the ability to do things, but also to equally be an observer and be 100% aware of what's going on, so that you can make sense to that horse and communicate with them. You know, it's like talking but listening at the same time, and doing both equally the same. You know, not letting one dominate the other one. But I think that having a neutral standpoint from which you can watch what's going on and listen to that horse, and also let them know that you see them, and let them know that you hear them, and let them know that you acknowledge them, even if they're giving you the answers you don't want, ties back into the calm. And the calm for me is being able to talk, but also listen and also just be in the moment and go with everything that happens as it happens, you know. And the other thing also is, as much as, and this is again my interpretation of it, but as much as we do with them, we equally kind of, it's easy to forget that horse, you know, you do something, but also behind that horse needs to know that you offer it that golden vault of relaxation that it's always craving, you know.
Right.
And that relaxation to me is that calm, you know, and it's showing that horse that you see them and hear them and acknowledge what they're doing, because then you can transmit that relaxation to them. And that relaxation to me is just a complete absence of anything, any static, you know, noise in your body or your actions or your intentions, just kind of immediately letting go and showing that horse that you saw what they did or you heard them, you know. So that's kind of my interpretation of the calm. It can have many meanings, you know, but it's something that I think takes practice, because as people, I don't think we're born with that kind of a muscle or feel. So it's something that I constantly try to get better at. And the more I pay attention to it, the more I see how it can really help anything that I do with a horse.
Well, internally by nature, we have so much going on, typically.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're used to, it would be awkward if like I were to have a conversation with somebody and talk to them and then stand there and just relax and like not engage, you know? So
right.
It's contrary to how we communicate with each other. But I think certainly maybe we could take some of what the horses are teaching us and maybe apply it to people. But I think that word, the calm, is such a valuable thing to be explored by all of us, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's such a great mindset, maybe, you know, to maybe that's the word I want to think of, to go into that with that idea that you're going
right.
to offer that piece first and foremost to the horse.
Right.
Which sounds a little bit similar to if we were to say the idea would be a release of pressure or something like that. But that's, right. It sounds to me anyway, almost like that's more of a release that you carry inside you. You kind of always have it, and just being there offers that. Yeah.
And I think that also holding an intention that, you know, you love. Like for me, I always kind of hold the motto, you know, even with a horse that might be acting in a way that we don't really want, hold the intention that I love this horse, even if I don't know the horse. I love this horse so much that I am going to do what I need to do to communicate with it so that it doesn't feel so bad enough that it has to act this way. So behind your calmness, you have to have an intention that comes from a love for the animal, you know. And I think those two together are very useful in every moment with a horse, you know.
Gotcha. So I'm just going to throw this out here, kind of rolling with this idea. Can you think of a way where you can describe to us sort of physically or emotionally, mentally, whatever, how that would come up? Like you're talking about a horse that's kind of reacting the way you wouldn't want. So in my mind, maybe the first thing that pops into my head is, say, trailer loading, because, and I think that's probably fitting that idea comes up, because we see so many people that get so crazy hyperactive and hyper reactive when it comes to trailer loading with a difficult horse. Or maybe I shouldn't say a difficult horse, but a horse that's having difficulty with that idea. How would you, can you talk us through how your calm might be part of that idea?
Right. So what comes to mind is like a little exercise that I try and do in clinics, and I do it myself with every horse, but it's one where it's a very, very simple exercise of synchronizing your feet with their feet, and it's just simply walking, stopping, and backing them up. And I find it to be one of the most powerful ways to start to show the horse that you can offer them this relaxation and this calm, because it's simple, but it's set up in a way that you can show it to them. And so what I mean by that is I'll walk along with the horse, and then all of a sudden I'll stop my feet. without warning them. And I'll just watch, what do they do? And, usually you see that horse take 5 extra steps, sometimes 1 extra step, sometimes 10 extra steps. And what I'll do then is I'll turn and I'll back them up. And what I start there doing is, as that horse backs up, then I relax my body. I turn it to the side. I relax my arms as well, because we have a tendency to hold our hands up just because we're holding a lead rope,
Mm-hmm.
or hold our hands up just because we're holding a stick. And by repeating that, sometimes it takes 5, 10, 15 times. Eventually your horse is going to synchronize right with you, because they're learning in each of those transitions, so to say. They're learning because you're able to show them right after, hey, look, here, you can answer me, here's what I can give you right away. So I show them with my body, I relax, I breathe, I lower my hands, I turn to the side, I don't stare right at them in the eye. And it's a great thing to do, because you have to repeat it multiple times in a row before you get that horse synchronized with you. But it's a way for them to start to calculate, hey, there's something in this for me. This person is offering me something when I respect them, and I back up when she asks me to. And I find that right then and there, I get to start showing them, look, I have this here, and I can give it to you, and it's available to you at any time. And if you communicate with me and start opening yourself up to my suggestions and working with me, I can offer this to you. And so that simple walk, stop, and back up exercise I find to be very useful to just start that conversation. Everything else that we do past that exercise will have the same pattern of me offering that relaxation after that horse does something. And it could be, something like asking the horse to step sideways. As soon as that horse relaxes its body and steps sideways, as the horse is doing it, I relax and change my body stance and breathe, and maybe even put a hand on their neck or something. But I need that horse, and even if that horse doesn't start to catch on to that, that's part of probably a big thing here, is even if that horse doesn't start to feel that from you, keep doing it, because they are going to tune into it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in the beginning, they're not going to necessarily say, "Oh yeah, that's what I've been looking for the whole time. Thank you. Okay, I'll stop doing I'll stop doing the thing that you didn't want me to do." But the more consistent you are, and the more credible you are as a leader. So keep offering that relaxation. Ask them something, and then offer it and offer it and offer it. And eventually, that horse is going to say, "Oh yeah, I see that," and then they're going to magnetize towards that more and more. And that pattern will stay true through everything that you do with them,
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the key timing about it is to relax as the horse committed to saying yes, or I'll try, and not, even better than after it's over, as they say yes, or I'll try, or sure, that's the timing to offer that relaxation there.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that when you can offer it as they're doing it, they'll try harder for you.
So emotionally, as they become committed to giving any kind of a response, that's when you're starting to offer that calm. Yes.
When I see them make an effort, I'll offer it and say, look, it's right here. Mm-hmm. It's right here for you. And then we'll try again. I'll say, it's right here for you. And eventually, what I love is that they know that I'll offer it to them, and they trust that I'll offer it to them, and I will,
Mm-hmm.
But it's starting that conversation, because, if a horse has been alive for, let's say, 5 years and working with people in one way, well, of course they're not going to give it up right off the bat just because you've stepped forward. So
right.
It's a process of unraveling and reconstructing,
Right. Now, you mentioned proving your credibility as a leader, and I love the words of that. I love how that sounds. Can you talk a little more about that for anybody who might be listening? Because I imagine you see it in clinics. We kind of see it all over. Riders or handlers that kind of struggle with that piece, that being a credible leader for their horse. So what are your thoughts on that? What does it take to be a credible leader, and how do we prove that to our horse?
That's a very good thing that we can elaborate on. I think that being credible means that horse needs to trust that you're there for them at all times, that you're present with them at all times, meaning you know, when you stand, like, for example, at a clinic, someone's standing there, and we just maybe did an exercise of working on respect with the horse, where they don't walk on top of you, and they learn to be respectful, even if they're standing right next to you, you know, not necessarily far away from you. But, you know, all of a sudden, let's say that horse takes a step towards that person, and that person unconsciously steps backwards. To me, the horses are constantly asking us questions, and those questions come in the form of a nibble on your arm, or a question in the form of nibbling on the lead rope, or a question in the form of pushing you off your feet, or pushing their shoulder into you, or, you know, even more severe, kicking, rearing, like, you know, things like that. But those questions that those horses are asking, that might start out, you know, as that nibble on the lead rope or as that nibble on your arm, they really need us to answer them, you know, because especially, I mean, we all know a horse that you take it into a new environment or add a new stressor in its environment, and then all of a sudden it starts wanting to nibble on you or push you off your feet. Well, I think those horses are asking us, are you really here for me? Do you really have my back right now? Are you really going to be here and protect us in this environment? Because I need to know right now. And I think in those moments, that's when we have to be there the most for them, because that's when they need us. And they have a right to ask us those questions, because, you know, being born with their DNA, they can't turn that off, you know, and
right.
we have to respect who they are as animals. So I think what credibility, one part of that is that it applies everywhere. It applies in the stall. It applies walking down the aisle, and especially when the horses show us signs of nervousness or distress, they really need us to kind of show them, hey, we have your back. Like, we can take care of this for you. You don't need to stress by yourself. And, you know, it was something simple as just backing them up or moving them over, or doing something to acknowledge that you saw that horse asked you that question and you answer it. So, and I found the more that you answer those questions, the more that they find you credible. The other thing about credibility is, I think, in my opinion, being fair. And being fair, I think, really comes down to, like, I used to play the piano, and I always think of a crescendo, like something that's, when you talk to the horse, you can start really softly, you know, but if that horse is giving you the green light to continue and go into the medium category or the more firm category, then part of being credible is that you have to be willing to do what that horse is asking you to do. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you start talking softly to them and they hear you right away, and then you offer them that relaxation. But if a horse needs you to be more firm, and firm is not have to be a negative term. It doesn't, you know, right. Dominance, you know, in our language is something that's sometimes coined as a negative term, but you can have a very good influence, you know, being dominant. But anyways, what I need to say is that being fair, like, you know, you can't jump into the medium category right away and start half shouting at your horse. You also can't jump into the firm category right away and start shouting at them or yelling at them through your actions. But credibility for a horse is always giving those first few signs and then increasing those signs as needed. And sometimes as people, we jump too quick, too soon, or we stay in that soft zone too long. And when we do that, that horse says, oh yeah, you know, I this is my opinion here, but I feel that the horses know that we're not for real when they see that we hang in the soft zone for too long, or that we're not willing to do what they need us to do to help them because we're a bit timid about using our aids or something like that. So I think being fair, it has to be done out of love for the horse, of course. You know, you're never firm. And by firm, you know, it could be something like a bigger tap than a soft tap, you know. But I think that it's important that you always start softly and increase as needed. But some horses give you that green light and say, hey, I need you to step up more and show me that you're for real here. And if you can't, then I know that it's okay. That's okay. But I know that now I need to kind of protect myself and kind of move my feet as I need to, you know?
Right.
So credibility, fairness in your aids, fairness in your intention as well. Like, I always say, like, if you're having a hard time and you're starting to get maybe upset with a horse, we'll just put him away and come back 10 minutes later, or come back the next day, come back with a friend, come back with another professional. But if you can hold that intention that you want to communicate because you love the animal and you want to do what they need you to do for them to feel safe and protected and under your leadership, that's a good thing, and that's very different than losing a temper with an animal. So I think credibility is also fairness, and also just continually pursuing knowledge of how to better read what they're doing and better and develop your own toolkit so that you can use different tools at different times as needed as well. So I think developing a feel for timing is very important when it comes to credibility, but also being vigilant all the time, that the work that you do in the arena is not all of a sudden turned off when you walk out of the arena.
Right.
Because the horses, it doesn't make a difference, where they are, but if they know that you are with them and see them and hear them and acknowledge them at all times, that will automatically raise your credibility with the horse, So that horse that pushes you off your feet down the barn aisle, and you kind of like maybe just keep on going. Well, right then and there, that horse asked you a question if you're really worth it as their leader, and you didn't answer them, and then you put them away and then bring them out again the next day, and same thing happens. But then in the arena, you don't let them do that. Well, that's not credible. Credibility is all the time, everywhere. You're there for them, and you're being their leader for them. That's kind of my take on it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that has to do that, the credibility has a lot to do with the consistency there then also,
yes.
And the maybe congruency with what you're looking for and the way that you're asking it. So like you're saying, you wouldn't just jump in right away whole hog to some sort of firm or hard response.
Right.
Particularly if you want the horse to be responding lightly, you're not going to jump in with a harsh response right off the bat, because then you're not giving him that opportunity to respond lightly.
Exactly, yes. And also learning, the personality of your horse and how you can adapt your tools and your exercises specifically to your horse for what it needs. That's also, in my opinion, involved in being credible, that you do what that horse needs, not what the one next to you needs,
Mm-hmm. Right. So how do you go about figuring out what that horse needs? Is that something where you have like a set of exercises or steps, or you look for certain signals, or how do you define, or how do you think of, well, this horse needs me to do this, whereas this other horse needs me to do that other thing? Do you have a formula you go through, or how do you work with that?
Well, I start observing how that horse is responding to me when I start to, for example, even going back to that walk, stop, and back up exercise that I do with all the horses in at clinics. Right then and there, you can kind of tell whether you have a horse that's a little afraid of you, or whether you have one that might be easily pushed into annoyance, or one that might be a little bit timid. And the way that I kind of see it is, if you see, for example, for a fearful horse, they might be a little bit more jumpy and quick to respond, and if I see that, then what I'll do is I'll start to adapt what I'm doing by, for example, maybe after I ask them to do something, I'll walk in and put a hand on them every time, and by put a hand on them, I mean just place my hand on their neck,
Okay.
And especially with a fearful horse,
sort of as a grounding move, is that what that is?
Yeah, exactly, because sometimes even the motion of petting or patting a fearful horse can cause them to flinch each time. So I'll be very specific, and instead of petting or patting them, I'll walk in and just firmly kind of place a hand on them and just wait until they relax,
Gotcha.
And I might do that over and over until that horse knows that, hey, the worst thing that's going to happen when you walk up to me is you're just going to put a hand on me.
Right.
Like a gentle hand that's reassuring and grounding.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if, for example, I see a horse that's starting to maybe push their ears back and act a little, their nose gets a bit tight and they're getting a little bit annoyed, what I might do for that horse is back off and start to show them, ties back into that relaxation. I might start showing them, hey, look, if you can try for me, I'll offer you this relaxation. If you can try for me, I'll relax and stand with you. And I found with the horses that get a little annoyed, by breaking it down into very small steps and showing them each time that you can offer them that they start to dissolve and kind of diffuse that annoyance. Because I think, and I don't know, so you don't know if it comes from confusion or if it comes from pain or anything like that. But I change the exercise based on what I see when I start it. So I might walk in there and say, okay, I'm going to back that horse up. But as soon as I start to see how that horse is reacting, well then, like I said, for that fearful horse, I might walk in and put a hand on them. For that annoyed horse, I might break it down even smaller and just ask them for like one step back and then show them that I can relax, or, basically adapting each exercise. But I observe how that horse reacts when I ask them to do something. And then I kind of see, well, okay, that seems to be pretty consistent with that horse. And maybe I need to adapt what I'm doing to help that horse feel better and feel more balanced with me. So I don't have necessarily a recipe for that, but I usually can start to see it right from the first exercise that I do with them. And I'm just basically observing how they're reacting and seeing, whether they look annoyed or afraid or timid or unsure. And then I adapt that exact exercise to kind of help that horse in the moment. And that applies for any exercise, but usually I start with something simple like synchronizing their feet with my feet, and right then and there I can kind of tell how they feel about being with me.
Gotcha. Yeah, you can get a feel for them. So we could say that would be very similar to meeting a new person, right? And yes. You're trying to engage in some sort of a relationship, friendship with them. You got to kind of feel around them a little bit, see who they are, see what they're all about.
Yes, exactly. And it's only, and it's fair. It's very fair to do that. And you have to do that because each horse is different, and they have, just like the people, each person is different, and we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we all have different parts of our personalities that are more developed than others. But, at the core, every horse wants a leader and appreciates being guided by a fair leader and one that has their best interest in mind. So you kind of go through the layers of the personality to get to that core. But I think all horses share core common values, and core needs that they need met when they're in our presence,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind for everybody. And of course that would change from one horse to the next. So who you are or who you present yourself to be would need to change then from one horse to the next. Yes.
It definitely, you seeing what they are and what they need, and definitely adapting yourself as needed for that animal. Definitely. And that's like building a muscle that you use, so it's something that takes time and you always encounter different horses that present to you things that you haven't seen before. So I think it's very important just to be open to that whole idea that each horse has a different kind of personality and different story and different way of being around us. And we just have to be open to kind of knowing that we are going to adapt our tools to that horse the best that we can, and of course when we know better, we do better,
Sure. So I know the question comes up to me fairly frequently, so I'm going to push it across to you because I assume you probably get this question also, but how do you make that adjustment from one horse to the next? How do you go from being, maybe a more quiet person with this horse, and then you're a more maybe flamboyant, louder, more boisterous person with the next horse? How do you make that shift with any kind of consistency?
Right. So I think that whenever I maybe switch from one horse to another horse, I always kind of, it's like cleaning the slate, you know, I always start fresh, scratch everything. And, you know, even if I know the horse already, I still approach that horse with a clean slate, meaning I'm not carrying any like vibes or intentions in my body and my actions, because I know that horse might be afraid, you know, or I know that horse might want to challenge me a little bit. So I think it's important that even though we know a horse might be a certain way, at least give that horse a chance each time when you ask it to do something. Give it a chance to express itself or answer you. And then from that answer, I would say that's when I say, okay, this is what we're dealing with today. Mm-hmm. And now I can adapt myself to what we're dealing with today in this moment. But I find that it's important to treat each horse as though they don't have a problem right off the bat, and then adapt as needed, because some days they might come out different than other days. But for me, I kind of clean the slate between each horse and treat them very, very fairly and without judging them. And then when I see what I have in each moment, then I know, okay, this is how I have to adapt myself. But I think that it kind of comes down to the question. When I'm working with them, I kind of ask myself, well, what do you need in this moment? You know, if I have one,
you as in you personally, or you as in the horse?
As in the horse, like okay. When I'm riding them or watching them in the groundwork, I think, what do you need from me to feel better? And it might be that I have to reassure them. It might be that I have to show them that I'm there for them in the form of respect, you know, honorable respect. It might be that they need, you know, something else. But I think that it's important that you observe without judging from the start, you know, because it's very easy especially when someone comes up to me and says, I have a horse that bites, or I have a horse that is so scared of a whip. Please don't pick up the whip around my horse, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, when I walk up to that horse, the last thing that I should do for that horse is act as though they're afraid or act as though they're going to bite me. You have to go up to them and act as though they're not going to do that. You know, keep it in the back of your mind to stay safe. But if you walk up to them with the intention of, okay, I know you're going to be scared, so I'm going to be on guard right now. Right. Well, that horse is already reading you and saying, why are you scared? Well, I should be scared then too. You know, mm-hmm. And that's kind of the dynamic I think that happens a lot between owners and their horses, is that there's a dynamic where that person kind of matches the horse's energy and what they have. And that doesn't give a horse the chance to release it, you know? Mm-hmm.
Matches or even adds to.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, adds to it. So sometimes it's pretty amazing, you know, if you have a horse that's afraid of a whip. I think a lot of the times, you know, people that hold whips that know that their horses are afraid of whips, they hold their hand with a lot of stress, you know, because They know that horse is afraid of it. And there's a very big difference between holding a whip so relaxed that it almost falls out of your hand because you don't even realize it's there, versus holding a whip in your hand with a lot of tension because you want to purposely hide it from the horse or make sure that you can control it. That is a huge difference that a horse will pick up on. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me how quickly a horse will actually let go of that stress when you don't carry it for them, you know?
Right, exactly. When you don't carry that stress for the horse, that's such a great way of saying that. So, what do you have any advice? I'm sure you give this advice for handlers, for owners that have bought into that emotion, and I shouldn't even maybe say it that way, because that makes it sound like I'm trying to say the horse is dishonest in that, and they're never that way. But for the owner maybe, or the handler that has grown to amplify the anxiety, maybe that's how I want to say that. Do you have any advice for those folks? How do they get over that?
Right. I think that, well, there's a few things I want to say about that, but I think one thing that's good for people that feel like they're in a rut, in a pattern with their horse that they can't get out of, first of all, attending a clinic, even as an auditor of a horseman or horsewoman that you admire and enjoy being around or seeing their work. I think that being in a group with other people that are learning is a very valuable way to help you kind of get through that that kind of a situation where you're in a rut with your horse and you can't really let go of that stress you have around them, because you can watch other people also go through the same thing, and your neighbor or your friend who's in the clinic with you might not have the same issue, but you can see from a different viewpoint, watching from the side, you can see that person over there who's not able to let go of their stress with their horse, or the other gentleman across the ring who's not able to let go of being too too rigid or stiff with his horse. But I think that it's important to know, number one, you're not alone. It's something that everybody has, and everybody works to let go of and make better at all times. So I think getting into a learning environment where everyone's there for the same purpose, which is to learn and better themselves for their horses, is a huge thing. Having that camaraderie is very important, and I think it's very important also to be supported when you're going through it. But also, I think being physically aware of your body, like sometimes I tell people, for a change, why don't you just drag your whips in the ground when you walk instead of holding them up and carrying them up, and just physically reminding yourself to let go of your hands, relax your hands down. And I mean, when you're riding, yes, also when you're holding your horse and, walking them around with the lead rope, and maybe you have a dressage stick in your hand or something, but physically taking your body, and maybe even sometimes, when I ride, if I feel like I might be holding any tension, I might pick up my elbows and then let them drop immediately down, just to remind my body, hey, you don't have to hold on to any tension,
Right, more of an awareness exercise.
Yeah, sometimes just noticing, hey, how am I carrying my hands? Well, why don't I reset and lift them up and then drop them right back down and relax them, Also, just simply breathing and not holding on to
Oh, you're supposed to do that while you ride?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people don't breathe. I don't know how they don't turn blue in the face sometimes. But
I've seen some that do.
But just breathing is a very important thing, because if you can slow down your breath, your body cannot go into a state of too much stress, So physically managing yourself physically and reminding yourself physically to relax your arms, relax your body, relax your shoulders, let your shoulders down. Body awareness is huge, I think, because physically, if your arms are relaxed and you're breathing nice and slow, it's pretty hard to also be tense at the same time. Now, mentally, you might be a little worried about it, but I think that's why I say being in a group environment or seeking out a professional that you trust and working with them is really important, because sometimes alone, it's not always easy, and sometimes you need to get in a group environment where it's fun and it's educational, but everyone's kind of going through the same thing,
Right.
So I would say, for me, I would say body awareness, but also just better, understanding horses helps relieve a lot of that, because I think a lot of the concern around horses and the worry around them stems from not understanding them, and not understanding why they're acting the way they're acting, misinterpretations of what's going on. And I think pursuing your own knowledge to further your own knowledge about horses and what their DNA tells them and what they need from us, just by reading or watching videos, I think is really important, because if you really understand why horses are doing things, you can kind of detach from it and help them,
Right. Keeping the emotions to the side.
Yeah, because if you see one that's walking on top of somebody, well, you could either say, well, that's a scary situation and we need to be careful around that horse, and we need to stay away from it, and if we do try and move it back, we need to do it really quick and really firm and aggressive, and then back off, kind of in a more nervous energy. Or we can say, well, the horse is doing it maybe because they're asking us a question if we're here for them, and sure, I'll step in and show that horse that I have their back here, So if you understand why they're doing things and research more about what horses need from us and what they search for around us, it also helps alleviate some of the concern that we carry unnecessarily. I think that it gives a combination of being supported in a group, furthering your education about horse nature, and your own physical awareness by yourself is a combination of all of those is important.
So we have to be self-aware, we have to be aware of the horse, and we have to do homework? Gosh, I mean, this is starting to sound like work here.
Yes. Yep.
I just want it to be easy.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's pretty cool when you start to learn like more about why they do things, why horses do certain things. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool because all of a sudden what you thought isn't the same anymore, and it makes it so much different and actually more interesting when you work with them, because sometimes all it takes is taking your glasses off and putting on a new pair and you see things from totally different, Yeah.
I like that, putting on a new pair of glasses.
Yeah, putting on that new pair and then seeing things from a different way and mm-hmm. Can totally change how you react to them and how you respond to them and how you feel around them too. Right,
sure. Well, and as you do that maybe frees you up to experiment a little bit, and that gives you even a new awareness of how the horse is going to be responding.
Yes, exactly.
And who that horse is as a person, right?
Right, exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So you still do quite a bit of liberty work, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about that. Tell me what sparked your interest in the liberty work, and what are you working towards with that?
Right. So I think I originally, of course, when I was in France, that sparked mm-hmm. it right there. But also when I was riding, I was doing a lot of jumping and dressage and things like that, and I loved it. But I always kind of thought, well, when I get off my horse at the end of the day and I take off its bridle and saddle, does that horse really want to be with me? And that question really started to bug me more and more and more. And part of me knew that the horses would not be with me, and that was a hard thing to realize. But part of me knew that if I took that saddle and bridle off, they might walk away, and they might not want to be with me. And that made me think, well, it doesn't matter what kind of competitions I do or how many blue ribbons, I could go win, because at the end of the day, I have to look myself in the mirror and go to bed at night and know that horse either saw me as important or they didn't, and even if they were complying with me. So I think that made me really, really want to pursue how to work with a horse with nothing on them, mm-hmm. and what's that process and journey like. And I'm really glad that I followed that gut feeling, because it's led me into experiences that have been phenomenal. And so to me, any horse that's under tack working, I also want to know that without that tack on, and I'm not talking specifically bridleless, but I'm talking without the tack on and just standing next to me, that horse still would view me as an important person that they can communicate with and work with as a team. So what that has done is made me want to kind of pursue that with each horse that I work with, whether they're a baby or whether they're an older horse. But on some level, have that horse where I know I could unhook them and that they would still want to be, around me. So where I want to take this, I think, is right now I have 2 mares. I have a mare that was in a kill pen in Oklahoma, and I've had her for a little over a year now. And then I have Mustang that I competed with at the Mustang Makeover in mm-hmm. Lexington, and I've had her since March. And what I'd like to do is put them together in a team where they're working together around me at Liberty, and hopefully eventually add in some more horses and I'd like to add in horses from unwanted backgrounds. So maybe some rescue horses or things like that. But I'd really like a group of horses that represents many different backgrounds, different stories, different situations, that we can all come together and work together harmoniously. But they don't all have to be the same color, or they don't all have to be the same breed. I really would like to have a very unique, diverse group of horses that works together with me. And what I really love doing demos. I love being able to talk about both of my mares and their backgrounds and my experience working with them, and of course performances as well. But I think demos are great because you can talk more to the people who are watching. in addition to performing to music. So I would like eventually, honestly, to be able to take my group of horses, whoever they are, you know, down the road and go to a completely open land where there's nobody around, no cameras, no Facebook, no cell phones, and you know, be on the back of one of them and have the other ones loose around me and just work with them together. And the only people that I want to be there are me, the horses, and whoever's watching from up above, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that would be the ultimate goal for myself. And it's one that's so personal and so connected to the animals and to you know, the environment that it you know, it would be something that nobody would ever see except me and the horses, you know? And I think that's kind of where I'd like to take it for my own personal goal. But of course, I would love to continue doing demonstrations and sharing with people what these specific horses have taught me and what they can also share with other people. So that's kind of where we'll keep going and doing clinics as well, and hopefully using the horses in clinics to help people learning. So yeah, I have goals going forward as far as educating people and performing, you know, inspiring people through music and through watching what I would do, but as well, I have my own personal goal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. So, and you're no stranger to the demonstration arena and to the competition arena. And if I understand it right, you competed this past spring in the Midwest Horse Fair Star Search competition, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that was with your rescue mare from the kill pen, correct?
Right. Her name is Mermaid. Yeah.
Mermaid, that was it. Mermaid.
Yeah, Mermaid. And at the time, so I had found out that they had that competition, and I didn't even have a horse yet. And I thought, my gosh, I have to go get a horse. So I got, it's a strange story, but I got some help to get her all the way down from Texas, all the way up to Lexington, Kentucky. And I had her, and, you know, we did about, you know, very little work together, and we submitted a video, and it went through. And then we had a little over 6 months of working together before we got there. And so I only knew her for a short period of time before we competed, but it was a very, very good experience. And I think it was really cool to take a horse that was standing in a kill pen, you know, like 7 months ago. And then now we're on a stage where there's like 8,000 people watching, and this horse is completely connected to a human. You know, I thought that was really cool that horse had that journey. You know, and
right.
That was just the start. You know, and it was funny because I had this whole routine planned. You know, and I had it all mapped out, and she had never been in front of a crowd that big before, and when the music started, I had to scratch the whole plan and start with a new one right within 5 seconds, and it went great. You know, we did what we could, and she really tried for me, and that was amazing. So it was a really good experience.
So why did you have to start with a new plan? Just the stress of the environment? What happened?
Yeah, because one thing that you can't really replicate too much unless you have thousands of people is, you know, when you walk into an arena where there's thousands of people there, it's one thing to hear the noise, but it's another thing to feel the vibrations of the people there, like feel the feet, feel the sounds, the bass noise of the music, all that kind of feel. I think that those vibrations, like really she had not had that before. And so when that happened, when they said, you know, turned off the lights, and then the crowd started roaring, she felt that. And I was standing kind of in the middle of the arena, and I was waiting for her to run out towards me, because she always knew to do that. And she was having a really hard time. So I ran back into the chute area and waited until she saw that I was there for her.
Okay.
And then as soon as I knew she saw me and knew that I was right there, then I we let her go, and then so we kind of missed the first part of the act, and then honestly we improvised from there based on what I had planned. But I did I did, I flowed with it as she could, and it still went really, really well. And I was really proud of her for doing that. And it was a very good experience. But sometimes, you have a plan and then you see the horse is not able to go right along with it, and you just adapt it and go with the flow, and it still turns out great. But right. I think sometimes you got to be willing to just ditch the plan like right away,
Yeah, no, and that sounds very smart. And we do see a lot of riders that kind of end up with the they get almost dumbfounded, right? They don't know what to do. Yeah. They weren't planning on that happening. So that's definitely credit to your years of experience and your time and your knowing of your horse also in that situation. So, just next time invite 8,000 of your closest friends to like a dress rehearsal or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure I'll have no problem finding those people.
Right, exactly. We'll just, put a post on Facebook. We'll get them all there for you.
Exactly,
so, and you still ended up doing all right though, didn't you?
Yeah, we came in second place. So
second place. Really well, I'm thinking with a big hiccup like that and still coming in second place, you must have had your shit together, right? You pulled it off.
Yeah, and I thought, let me show her that we're going to do what she does best and what she knows best.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also not going to try and contain her at all. So I let her kind of flow with a higher energy throughout the routine.
Okay.
And she's normally a horse that has a little bit less energy, but she had a lot more that day, and so we just flowed with it,
Mm-hmm. Sure, and I'm sure that was all credit to the energy and the kind of electric energy of the whole situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool, and again, that's testament to how much you knew her and how much you trusted that relationship that you had together, that you were able to trust her and kind of go with the flow.
Right.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So, and then your Mustang mare, you competed with her in the Extreme Mustang Makeover here also in 2017, yeah?
Yes, yeah, Wildheart is her name, yeah.
Okay.
And we did the Lexington Extreme Mustang Makeover, and that whole experience was phenomenal because, it was funny. I was going to pick her up, and I was hoping that I would get a gray mare, and I was hoping that I would get a horse that would really change my career for the better. And, be careful what you ask for, because the universe gave me a gray mare and gave me a horse that completely pushed me outside my comfort zone, which now I know was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because she taught me so much, So I asked for a horse that would change my career for the better, but what that meant was a horse that would really make me push and learn and expand in ways that I didn't even know, So she turned out phenomenal. I mean, in the beginning, I didn't even think that we would get through it. And at the end, I remember going through the finals, and we made it to the finals. And I remember going through, and I really felt bonded to her by the time we were at the makeover. Of course, like all the other competitors, we all felt really bonded to our horses. But, out in the warm-up arena, I kept kind of thinking and saying to her, I'll tell you exactly what we have to do out there. You're not going to be alone, but just wait and listen and trust that I'm not going to abandon you out there, And, I'm studying my pattern to go in and trying to focus on that. And it was kind of weird because she kind of like turned her face as I was like saying that and looked up at me. And, I kind of laughed, and I thought that's kind of weird, but on some level that intention, passed on to her, because she went there and just completely blew me away. I mean, she took me so seriously at that competition. And you stand outside the gate and you have to pick up canter and go down center line, and they have no idea what they're going to do, and she just went. She did everything that I asked her to do, and she tried harder and harder for me. And I felt so just thankful for the whole experience, because she really, really, I have to say, because of her, maybe down the road, I'll be able to work with a horse in 5 years that's coming to me, and I wouldn't have been able to help it had she not come to me now,
Right.
And I think that the whole Mustang Makeover was just such a good experience to have a goal that a date for that goal and work with a horse, and also just to spend so many hours with one horse. Like there was a period where I was spending like 6 hours a day with her, just being with her. And how often do you get to do that, you know?
Right.
So that in itself, spending just so many hours with one horse is so important and teaches you so much. But she's a phenomenal mare, absolutely phenomenal. And I have to say, she's probably one of the most phenomenal horses I've ever been able to ride. And all my friends who might be listening might be laughing because it was a hard journey, but I really feel like she's one of the coolest horses that I've ever gotten to ride, and she's a Mustang, you know.
That's fantastic. So what was your biggest challenge with her?
Getting on her, like, you know, I took a really, really bad fall off of her, and by bad I mean it looked bad, you know, somersaulted and landed on my back, but it didn't. I wasn't sore. I would tell you if I was sore, but I wasn't sore at all and didn't get hurt at all. But just getting on her was really hard, and also like the fact that she was so introverted as a mare, like very, very, you know, not expressive in how she would express things, like very introverted, kept everything to herself, and very, very reactive, you know, and you know, partly like I had to understand, like, you know, she was a wild horse, and now she's, you know, with us, and maybe she doesn't want to be here, you know, and she doesn't understand that she can't go back to the wild. So I think that just getting on her was the hard part, because she'd do stuff for you on the ground and would do it very, very nicely. But there was a period where I wasn't sure that she was ever going to let me ride her, you know, and with the help of a lot of friends, she, you know, that helped kind of impart knowledge onto me about how I could do things better for her. I really was able to finally develop a relationship and connection with her where she trusted me. And I remember the day, like there was a day where we were working together and I was long lining her, and I had been with her for must have been 6 hours at this point, not physically making her like work, and just working with her mentally on doing different little things. And I remember looking at her, and, you know, all of a sudden her muzzle had relaxed and her nostrils had shifted, and she wasn't as pinched in her mouth, and she was blinking and like actually looking at things and looking at you. And I thought, that's interesting, because I think she just let go on some level. She just let go of that stress. And so I would say the riding part was the hardest. Once she accepted me up there, she really, really started to try hard for me, and I felt so bonded to her that at the auction, you know, I was not going to let her go, and I just held my bidders card up in the air, and I was not putting it. I didn't even put it down and put it back up. I just held it up there, and I just said, like, you know, this horse, she did exactly what I asked her to do. She tried her heart out for me, and now it's my turn to bring her back with me, like I promised her, you know. And so
that's fantastic.
Yeah, now she's here with me.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm going to take us back to that Star Search competition again at the Midwest Horse Fair, because it occurs to me that I forgot to mention. So you had worked with Mermaid that you got specifically for that competition. Yes. And you had, 6-7 months to the competition to get prepared. And
yes.
I would imagine most of the other horses that you were competing against, some of those were other seasoned performing horses. Is that right?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, and that was something that was that I knew going into it, and made me work even harder. You know, in the preparation. Yes, that was you know, that was.
Yeah, that was something that I just kind of wanted to point out for our listeners, so that they sort of understood the challenge that you faced there, because I did know a few other performers that were in that competition who have been performing with their horses for many years. You know, in those public venues like that. So you had, you know, the 6 months to go into that. So very different, I think, in that case to the Mustang makeover, where basically everybody goes into it with 100 days, right? Gentle and then to compete. So, everybody was on kind of a clean slate with that. And with that deal, You were probably the one going in with the biggest handicap.
Yeah,
as
because
far as
she
the
didn't
time
have a clue.
schedule.
I mean, she had never been in a place. I mean, I took her somewhere where we had maybe like 50 people applauding, and that was it. But can't recreate. You really can't recreate the energy in a room of thousands of people. No. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So that's, I think that in itself is an absolutely commendable feat, that you were able to take her from that and compete and do that well, up amongst some of, the very seasoned performance horses.
Well, thank you. I loved the whole experience. I thought it was very, very good, and loved being around people who also do this, quite a bit.
Yeah. It's a different crowd of people. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. And everyone's so unique, and
there
was no act like another. So it was great to see different people and what the ideas they come up with. And yeah, I loved it.
Right. It's like running away with the circus.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think most of my family and friends think that somehow I'm in a circus somewhere.
Isn't that what it feels like sometimes, right?
It does. Yeah, it really does.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I got an opportunity the other day to watch a DVD a friend lent to me to watch because he knew that you and I were going to be having this chat together. And he knew that I hadn't seen it yet. And it was a DVD that you had produced, you put out, teaching horses to lay down.
Right.
And I know we talked a little bit ahead of time, and you said that you would be willing to chat with us about that. You've got, from what I saw on the DVD, you've got some pretty interesting ideas on teaching a horse to lay down. Very different than a lot of the techniques that I've seen. Some of the techniques I've seen I think are pretty good. Some of them that I've seen I think are pretty damned barbaric, and I wouldn't put any horse through them. But yours was very unique in that there were no extra tools, no hobbles, no ropes, basically nothing aside from what you'd normally work with a horse with. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically what it is just mimicking how a horse would naturally lay down. So the thing is, when it's very, I guess one of the ways that people lay horses down is by using a rope and maybe asking the horse to bow and then from there lay down. But what happens is when you restrain a horse, when you restrain one of their legs, whether it's done not in a good way or in a way that you're still trying to care for the animal, when a leg is restrained, a horse will resist and park themselves out, meaning that they will resist by stretching out their legs. And when that happens, it's actually completely contrary to the position that they would take to actually lay down. So I think that doing it this way is a lot more beneficial, first of all, to people, because you can't get hurt. You're not restraining the horse in any way. You can take the time to go through the process with you and your horse. There's no rush. There's no immediate lay down. And I think that it's just like any other exercise. It's a good way to develop the communication between you and your horse, because it gives you many opportunities to work on showing your horse that they can answer you and that you can offer them relaxation when they try. It's just like anything else. But I find that, it's not so much about the lay down as a trick. And of course it's great to have your horse lay down, but I just think it's a wonderful exercise to use just to improve the connection and communication with your horse.
So I was going to ask you why you would want to lay a horse down. And so that would be then your answer with that.
Yeah, because I think that by the time you go through the process of teaching them to lay down, doing it the way where you teach them to mimic the position that they already know, their bodies already know how to do it. I think that the end result when the horse does lay down, that's the end result of the horse being willing, relaxed, and obedient to what you're asking them. But you didn't get there right out. You didn't get there by just throwing the horse on the ground. You got there by taking the time to work with them and go through the process. And so I think that the end result of the lay down is that tells you whether you have a good relationship with your horse, and whether you've worked with them and they understand you. And I think that's just like the icing on the cake. I think everything else is really important, like teaching them each step, how to lower their head and bring their hind legs towards their front legs and pick up each front leg and bend at the knees. I think that's all the most valuable part, because all of those steps really matter in getting the end result. The other advantage of teaching to lay down this way is that by the time your horse is laying down, you already have a cue that teaches them that they know to do, to lay down from. When you lay them down by restraining one of their legs, physically they kind of give up and lay down. By the time you take the rope off of their leg the first time, you still don't have a cue that even tells the horse to start thinking about laying down. Mm-hmm. That's something that you build in afterwards. So the difference is in this method, the lay down cue is there by the time the horse is laying down.
Right.
That's I think maybe an advantage of doing it that way. But I've always been fascinated by the lay down. I think it's amazing to see horses that are willing to lay down and not and be inhibited from moving at their own free will because they trust you enough, And I just think, I remember the first time that I had a horse lay down next to me, and I thought that is the coolest thing ever, because that horse really knows that I've got its back and that, nothing's going to happen to it. And that to me is phenomenal. And I love trying it with different horses and learning about it. But I think, even if you don't actually get your horse to lay down, let's say, all the steps involved are still really important and valuable and give you another way that you can work with them, And like I said, if you don't have a time constraint, it's a great way to, it's a great way to work on it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it builds in, I would say it either improves and or proves the trust that you've built in them up to that point.
Yes.
And from what I've seen in the DVD and other videos of you laying your horses down, it doesn't ever compromise that. And right. I really appreciated that. You're never compromising in that whole process the trust that they're giving you in order right. to get them to, or teach them to understand what you want when you want them to lay down like that.
Right. And even the first step of teaching them to lower their head, the way that I do it, I actually teach that to every single horse that I work with. I think it's really important that they learn even just that step. So, I'm using that first step of the lay down kind of for all horses, because I find that it's very useful, and it's like you said, you're not compromising them at all, but it's something that I find really helps a lot of them. Just in the way they even hold their bodies, if they know they can relax, and lower their neck and let go of any tension where they hold their neck up. I mean, that's really valuable,
Right. Absolutely. Now, is this something that you also teach in clinics? And I'll put out the little plug for you that I think that DVD, if anybody's interested in learning more about laying their horse down in the process of that, I highly recommend your DVD. It is fantastic. Is that something that you teach in your clinics also?
Yeah, usually what I'll do is I'll do a demo maybe, during the lunch or some point during the day, and we'll go over the steps. And if I have a horse that's already laying down, I'll show people that. But if I don't, then I'll just start from scratch and show people where I start, and we'll talk about it. I also have, for people that are interested in the bow, a way to also go about teaching the bow without restraining any of the legs, which is similar to the lay down. It's just done in a different way. So sometimes we'll go over that as well for people that are interested in that. But yes, I do go over it in clinics and demos especially.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about your clinics then also. What are some of the topics that you teach? What's your general format? I would imagine there may be some folks out there listening that are interested in riding with you. And of course, I would recommend that for anybody. So tell us more about your clinics.
So usually what I'll do is, we'll do Sometimes we'll do like 2-day groundwork clinic or a 3-day groundwork clinic. And what we'll go over in that groundwork clinic is just starting to, first of all, understanding your horse and starting to teach them how to respect you and then ultimately trust you. And, that's easy to say, but there's a lot of things involved in that path. So we'll go and we'll work on having your horse synchronize with you and taking it through some exercises of you working with your horse, allowing you to access and influence their different body parts, letting you in the door in their shoulders, letting you in the door in their rib cage, letting you in the door in their hindquarters, and seeing where do our horses block us from talking to them, influencing which parts of their body. And I think it's amazing the changes that happen in the horses over the course of even a day when we've moved their body parts around in a positive way. How the horses start to relax and let go of stress that they've been holding. So we'll do in our groundwork clinics a lot of that, and we'll also work on teaching our horses how to handle stress, because I really like to go over that, how we can teach our horses to cope with stress. So giving them a way, something that they can do when they feel stressed out that will help them relax. And I love to talk about that because no matter where we go, we are going to encounter stressors and things that could be potentially frightening or threatening to a horse and to us. So usually half the clinic we'll talk about stress and how to work with that. In the riding portion, we'll work on a lot of just accessing the horse's body parts and influencing them differently at different levels at all 3 gates, and also incorporating some movements in there, like asking our horses to step sideways and changing the horse's balance and things like that. I really, really like to also know people's personal and individual goals, because sometimes when we go to a clinic, everybody wants to work on canter departures. So what we'll do is go through some basic exercises to help our horses relax and stretch their necks, or move their body parts around in a positive way. And then we'll all go and we'll start to break down, well, what is a canter transition? How can we help that horse balance better to pick up canter? What do we need to do? And what I'll do is, when I know what the goals are of the group, is we'll cater the morning to preparing for that, for example, in the afternoon. So mostly what I teach under saddle is related to my own personal foundation and dressage from that background. That's kind of how I see things, but also combined with the same things that we go over in the groundwork, adding in the mental portion of the riding as well, making sure that our horses are okay with us up there and that they're relaxed and that their state of being underneath the saddle is still okay. We don't want to just use intimidation to get them to do things, because I think that, amazingly horses will let us, but at the same time, I think that will actually run off the cliff at some point. We really need to develop their mind as well. And so I try to tie the two together. Sometimes people prefer to just do groundwork, and I always start with groundwork anyway, even if it's a riding clinic, we always start with groundwork. But I do like to do that first before we ride. So
awesome.
There's many different ways to organize them and many different formats based on what the interests and needs are of the group.
Perfect. Good. Very good. So we've got a handful of questions that have been coming in from our listeners. So are you okay with fielding a few of those at this point?
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Perfect. And, while we're live, who's going to actually say no as an answer to that question anyway, right? So nothing like putting you on the spot. So Tony asked the question early on in our talk, and I'm glad that she did, because I want to know the answer to this also. What is biobehavioral health? You mentioned that that's what you were going to school for.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so...
Or that's what you went to school for. Sorry.
And actually, I think there's only one other college that offers that degree with that name, and I think it's Johns Hopkins. But what it is it's a combination of all the science classes, so your biology and chemistry and physiology and all that stuff. And what it does is you take those courses that would basically allow you to have your prerequisites for med school or nursing school and things like that, but you also have to take more specialized courses, for example, in stress. How does the body respond to stress? What happens on a cellular level when, we have stress we took courses on addiction, what happens physically when someone's addicted to something, really interesting courses like that. So it's a combination of like the sciences with some more specialized courses and mixing in psychology and behavior in there as well. So it was kind of like a way to sample a little bit of everything related to a future in healthcare, some sort of healthcare degree or some sort of degree some sort of field where you're working with people's behavior or their bodies, their health, their well-being in some manner. And I just thought it was, I could have gone and maybe done a full biology degree, but I wanted a little bit of everything, and just enough to kind of get the prerequisites that you needed, but also to have it be fun and interesting, So it was a very interesting degree, and you really could cater it as you wanted. All of us had to take the same courses, but at some point we got to kind of pick and choose which ones we took, which was really cool because I took some very interesting classes. So that's kind of what it was about.
That's very neat. Very cool. So Ginger asks us a question here, and it's kind of a long question, so I'm going to make sure that we can get through this. How do you encourage an owner or handler that lacks emotional control to desire or want to understand more about the horse's point of view? An owner or handler that, okay, so this might even be two questions. So let's start with that one. How do you encourage the owner or handler that lacks emotional control to want to understand more about the horse's point of view?
So, what I think is encouraging them to want to understand. That's one thing, because I think that sometimes in order to want to change something and be open to changing something, we sometimes run into a wall, and I think that it's when you run out of ideas for that person, maybe that's when that person says, well, okay, it's time that maybe I seek some help from somebody that I trust, or pick up a book that I think might be able to help me. And that's when you kind of start to say, well, now I'm ready to hear maybe what other people are saying. So in that sense, I think sometimes it takes running out of ideas in order to be open to more ideas. But also encouraging someone that isn't able to have management over how they feel around their horse. I think it's important to work with somebody, whether it be private lessons or in a group, because then you can go back and forth. And what I love to do, especially with people that are nervous, is I'll work with them and then I'll say, okay, I want you to come stand where I'm standing, and I'm going to work with your horse for a moment. And I want you to see things from a different angle. And what's really good, I think, for those people is that they can see somebody else start to take their horse through something, and it kind of demystifies what maybe their thoughts were about it, and helps them see that it's possible. And sometimes you need somebody to step in there and show you that it's possible, and I think working directly with someone that you trust is very valuable and important. And for anyone out there that's listening that doesn't know somebody that you trust, there's many people that you can reach out to ask, hey, do you know anybody in this area or this state or this city? And the worst that we say is we don't, but we'll find somebody, and we'll network and help you find somebody that you can work with.
Right.
There's always, I think that everybody needs to help everybody. So I firmly believe in working directly with somebody, but also realizing that what you're doing might not be working, and maybe you have to allow yourself to go and hear what someone else has to say and show you.
So that goes back to your idea of, take off your glasses and put on a new pair.
Yeah, exactly. And I think by working with someone that is able to help you and step in and kind of switch places with you now and then, that's very nice to have, because then you can see things from a new angle and put on different glasses,
Right. So the second part of her question is about an owner that isn't by nature soft or willing. How do you sell the idea of a fair deal to that owner that doesn't think that horsemanship or behavioral responses are maybe necessary for what it is they want to do with their horse? I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I understand that, because I understand, if you're pursuing more knowledge on horses and you see somebody that might, be having a hard time or might not be open to it, you just learned something exciting and you want to go share it with everybody. The thing is that sometimes people maybe aren't ready to embark on the same journey that you're on, and I think as long as somebody's not causing harm to a horse, it's a very different story if someone's causing harm to a horse. There's a way you can maybe go about suggesting, hey, I just want to let you know I took this clinic or read this book, and I think you might find something interesting in there, in a very indirect way you can say it. But I think if someone's not causing harm to a horse, then maybe they're not quite ready, but maybe they will be in a year, maybe they will be in 2 years, or maybe it's not you that's going to spark their interest in it. Maybe it's something else. And I think that it's important to not take it maybe personally, because the bottom line is, horses, they don't, we have them stabled in stalls and stuff like that, but they don't really, need us like they do when they're domesticated. But I think, we're learning from them, so I think that also those people that you guys want to help and share with, they're also learning, but they might not be seeing it or saying it the same way you are. I think it's also I love telling stories. I think storytelling is a great way to teach, because people love listening to stories. So, sharing the story of you at a clinic and what you saw and learned, I think that's a great way to impart on somebody some knowledge, but doing it in a way that you're not trying to change them. You're just sharing with them, sharing your experience, telling your story. I think that's important. But, sometimes just sharing without pushing is a great way to go,
Well, and I like how you said it too. Sometimes they're just not ready yet. It depends on where they are. I had a friend tell me years ago that there's 3 kinds of people in the world. And I keep this in mind, all the time. It's interesting. She probably has no idea how much impact she had with this little statement, but she said there's 3 kinds of people in the world. There's the kind that get it, whatever it happens to be, right? There's the kind that get it. There's the kind that are trying hard to get it. And then there's the kind that are incapable of getting it, either presently or permanently.
Right.
And that doesn't make any of them right or wrong. It's just where they are at that time.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's important to accept and acknowledge people wherever they're at,
Yep. Because you're sure not going to cram any of this stuff down their throat, and like you said, so long as they're not doing damage, so long as they're not hurting the horse in the process.
Yes.
Then,
and you also don't want to carry around with you the kind of, because remember, when you're working with a horse, you can't be working for the people watching. You have to be working for that horse in that moment. And if you're working with it to try to prove a point to somebody that's watching, you're not 100% there with that horse, because you're working on an agenda. So it's also important to, that it's a very honorable thing to kind of take a deep breath and say, that's not, maybe that person's not ready yet. I'm going to just do the best work I can with my horse right now, and maybe share my stories with them, my experiences. If they don't seem receptive, that's okay. I didn't share it with them anyway to change their point of view. I just shared it because they're my friend,
Yep. There you go. I like that attitude. So Anne asks us, is it possible to teach a more mature horse, say a horse older than 20 years, some of the groundwork exercises that you teach?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. I find it really, really helpful, actually, because a lot of it is, stretching their bodies and moving their bodies, and it's a great way to help keep them fit and using their, instead of standing in the paddock or the field, they can actually stretch and move. And I think it's because you can do it. You don't have to have them trotting and cantering. You can do a lot at the walk. You can do stuff at the halt. So I think absolutely. I think it's a great thing.
Perfect. Good. So Anne, next time Ariana is in your area teaching a clinic, sign up, even if your horse is older. So awesome. Good. So Kendra asks a great question, and Kendra's always asking great questions. She says, the hardest part for me is to adjust my response to a horse that has a history of dangerous behavior. How do you walk yourself through adjusting yourself, and what do you bring forward to the horse?
Right. So I think it's important when you know maybe a horse that has a history. First of all, if you're at all concerned about a horse maybe being aggressive or hurting somebody, I would definitely suggest maybe having somebody there present with you, maybe another professional that you trust, someone that you can feel is there and available to help you or tell you things from a different point of view, because you
or at least somebody
alone.
to call 911 or film it to post on Facebook, right?
Gently going towards that, yes, exactly. Someone that can call. Basically, if you get hurt, someone
Right.
that's there. You don't want to be alone with a horse that's aggressive. But at the same time, I would say, so first of all, have somebody there with you. And if you're at all concerned that the horse has hurt somebody before, I would have a professional there that you trust, and maybe have them help evaluate for you or with you. Don't be alone, The other thing is that and we talked about this earlier, remember when you walk towards a horse to go get it in a stall or put a halter on it, and you walk towards it with the intention of, I'm a little bit afraid of you right now, but I'm going to kind of act tough because I know you could be dangerous. That's not a very reassuring energy to pass on to a horse,
Mm-hmm.
It would be better if you walked into that stall with the mantra, I'm here for you, I'm going to treat you just like every other horse, but you have to respect me, That's a different attitude to walk in the stall with. And I think that you have to, if you're going to work with a horse that has maybe a history of aggression or things like that, you have to be able to walk in and put those feelings aside. And if you don't feel like you can, then I would have somebody that you trust and that could help you do that, because it's not worth it to get hurt. It's not worth it to put yourself in a dangerous situation. But, sometimes aggressive horses I've had people, that tell me that their horse was aggressive and it was maybe nibbling on the lead rope, not to say there can be horses that absolutely have crossed the line and can hurt people. And that's another story, but make sure that, we're not also creating a story for the horse that's not theirs, So I would say come in with a neutral standpoint, a clean slate. Try and walk in with a mantra in your head if you need to help you do that. But be willing to step up if needed, and be there for that animal and show them that you're there for them, and that if they, want to step towards you and make, push you off your feet, that's not okay, but you do it because you care for them, not because you're afraid of them and trying to just dodge every move that they make,
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're at all uncomfortable, definitely get a professional there with you that you trust. That's not something to be taken lightly, but at the same time, even that professional that comes in, every horse that I work with that might have some, let's just say aggression, I have to leave that at the door. I have to. Otherwise, I can't stay present to do my job,
Right.
I have to. I say, okay, there's the story. Great. I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to leave it, and now I'm going to walk in, and I'm going to be there for that horse. And if that horse wants to start presenting that to me, then I'll handle it in that moment. But I'm not going to carry that in with me, because automatically that horse is going to scan me and say, why is she all worked up? There's something wrong. I need to act now,
Mm-hmm.
And that you don't want to provoke them like that,
Right. You have to find a way to be emotionally neutral in
Yes,
those situations. And I think also a big piece as a takeaway to this too is trust your gut.
Yes.
If you feel like it's over your head, don't try to be tough and push through it, because it's like you said at the very beginning, that's not going to help, because that's putting through a totally different energy than being there because you're confident and because you can help. That's a very different kind of energy than trying to just be tough and get through it.
Yes, and I think it's an admirable quality in someone to say, hey, I'm not comfortable. Do you mind giving me a hand? And
Mm-hmm.
even among professionals and colleagues, I enjoy being able to share with colleagues of mine and we'll switch places and look at things from different angles. Like, I love doing that. And I think that's great to do. So definitely don't feel ashamed doing that.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Fantastic. And thank you, Kendra, for that question, because I think that's really important for a lot of people to understand that piece. So Karen has a question that I think is awesome also. We get so many great questions on here. I won't lie. I think we have the best listeners out there. So Karen's question is, amateur owners often cannot work with their horses every day. Of course not, right? Because they have jobs and they have lives and they have things like that. But what do you recommend as a minimum frequency of working with your horse in order to remain effective?
That's a good question. So I don't think that there's a minimum frequency. I think that if you do quality work in a session, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 15 minutes, whether it's an hour, that matters more than the amount of times that you can do that. Like, if you do a quality session, you come back in 2 weeks and do another quality session, that's still very valuable. Obviously, in my opinion, as much as possible is better, because it just gives you more chances to try and to work on things. But I think it comes down to more how present you can be with your horse in each session and the quality of work that you're doing versus how many times, because you can do many times but not be doing quality work. So and I've had horses where, actually not that long ago, I was at a rescue, and there was a little rescue there that I had worked with a year prior to that date, and he had a pretty hard time with what we were doing, and within a few days he had come around really nice, and I was sad to leave, but I came back a year later and he had not been worked in that way at all in a year. And I came back and was doing another clinic, and I decided I was going to do a demonstration, and I thought, well, I'll just take him again, because he'll probably present the same things that he did last time, and if he does, that's great, because we can all learn from it and help him through it. Well, I brought him in the round pen. He remembered everything.
Awesome.
Everything that I taught him a year ago. That's awesome. And it was pretty funny. We were all kind of like smiling and laughing about it, but like that was real. So it just goes to show that it's not, if you can do quality work, then do it as much as you can, but don't feel pressured to have a set amount of time, because it doesn't matter how many sessions you do, it's what you do in those sessions.
Right. Absolutely. And I might add in with that also that it depends on who your horse is as a person also.
Yes.
I know I've been in certain situations at boarding barns and things like that where the horse might just be acting like an orangutan, bouncing off the walls and goofing off and things like that, because it's a horse that needed more stimulation, needed maybe a little bit more work, just because it was kind of maybe a juvenile delinquent or whatever, that's who the horse was. So a horse like that, it's maybe a little more important that there is some sort of a frequency or a regularity. But in that case, I know my recommendation for folks is, if they can't make it out, find somebody who can, right?
Yes,
find
absolutely.
some sort of stimulation for that horse so that they can get out some of that energy. Because I know I've been on the handling side of some of those horses in those boarding situations and that sort of thing, and it can just make it miserable for everybody. And then a handler whose job it is not to maybe train the horse, but maybe to just turn them out and bring them in for feeding and things like that, it's potentially putting them at risk as well.
Yes, I agree. And certainly the horse that has the extra energy is a little bit fresh. That is something that is not going to help them. Those are horses that need to move their feet more, and just like some people do better going to the gym more often than others. Same thing. There are certain horses out there that need to go to the gym to feel better and to be able to focus more, and that's absolutely something that I agree with you on for those horses. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it does. It depends a lot on who that horse is, But I think you're right for the most part. The quality is more important than the frequency in most situations. Especially if you've got a horse that's maybe living in a herd and has more turnout time than than just limited, daytime turnout or something like that. I know I've seen a lot of situations where horses are in full board, full pasture situations, and they're perfectly happy out there, So the idea of progression is one thing, and then the idea of kind of public safety, which is really what we could consider that in the case of the fresh, flamboyant sort of horses, that's a different story.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So those are the questions that we have there. Looks like a great time for some wrap-up questions here, if you're keen on those.
Sure.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, Ariana, if there was one specific thing that you would recommend for riders to focus on as a primary means of improving their horsemanship, what would that be?
So for riders, for who are riding, correct?
Sure, yeah, or for handlers on the ground.
Then I would say that would be, like I talked about it earlier, being able to acknowledge and see and let your horse know that you see and hear them. By that I mean being able to relax when they do something right, being able to intervene and ask them to do something when they're maybe not doing something that you want, but being able to listen and see what's going on no matter what you're doing, and being able to have that line of communication open where you are able to actually hear them and not be so tuned into what you're doing. I think that's across the board really important. So definitely, as much as you're riding, as much as you're doing on the ground, also be watching them and letting them know, hey, I saw that. Hey, I felt you do that under saddle. Look, I'll relax right now. Do you feel that? That to me is really important.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
I think I would go and I would love to go back and ride with Jean-Francois Pignon in France. I think that would be cool. The guy that I met down at the festival, I think that would be really, really cool. Just spend some more time and just learn new things with him. I just really really loved watching him work with the horses. Yeah,
especially now that you've had the time to work on those ideas, right?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And just to go back, and now I have some different ways that I see things, but to go back and again kind of maybe hear things and that they'll apply differently to me now. But I would love that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what is your personal present definition of horsemanship?
Wow, that's a good question.
No pressure, but around the world, people are listening and waiting now.
Yeah, waiting on this live broadcast. I think it's, so much I want to say, but I think it's just continually knowing that there can always be a better way, and always better way for me personally, always a better way to work with each horse, and knowing that it's never, our learning is never over, and always to be open to the process and the journey of it all, and to strive to have a willing horse that's relaxed and feels like it can understand you, and that you can understand the horse, and being open to what other people are doing that you like, and things like that. So I think it's just getting to the core of the horse and communicating with that horse in a way that it understands, making sense to that horse. And I think horsemanship is, as much as it's a journey with the horses, I think it's a journey for ourselves as well, getting to know ourselves and becoming better people and better around the animal,
So true. That is great. Yeah. How can folks find you?
You can find me either through my website, which is arianasakaris.com, and you can send me a message there, or send me an email, which is on there as well. You can also, if you like my Facebook page, you can send me a message through Facebook as well. And I believe the phone number is also on the website, so that's another way you can reach me.
That's fantastic. All right. So at the end of almost all of the videos that I do and all of the broadcasts that I do, I ask a question to our audience. And that's a question that anything random really that pops up to the top of my head. I put it out there and folks answer the questions in the comment section for us. Now, anytime I have a guest on, the guest gets to ask the question of the day. And I never prepare people for this because the randomness of it is amazing.
Okay.
So what is our question of the day?
So I think that it would be really cool if everyone could share the moment that brought them the most joy with their horse. It could be something from when you're young. It could be something with the horse you have now. But which moment put a smile on your face that you could not wipe off your face with your horse? And I think that would be really cool for people to remind themselves of.
I love that. That's awesome. I cannot wait to read everybody's answers for that question. That's awesome. So gang, put your answers to that question in the comments section below this video here. And I'm going to check in, and I'm pretty sure Ariana is going to check in also to read your answers for that. That's fantastic. Ariana, thank you so much for joining me for this broadcast. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much. I loved it. I really did.
Good, good. Awesome. And I think everybody else out there has loved it too. I've seen lots of little heart emojis floating past during our conversation. So that's awesome. So gang, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 19 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Ariana and I your ear. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast here through Facebook, on YouTube, or by streaming from iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. Through whatever outlet you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share. Your word of mouth is the fuel for this fire. Tune in next week, gang, for Talking About Horses, when I'll be joined by rider mechanics expert Wendy Murdoch. Thanks so much, gang.